So they're starting to get just a little bit, you can kind of see they're drying just a tiny bit. And they're smelling really good. So now I'm going to add my mushrooms. And I don't know if you can tell when this goes in, if you can see any of the steam coming off. I can start to see there's a lot of steam coming off of the mushrooms because they're so wet. So that's a good sign. That's what we want. And you might start to see a little pools of liquid in your pan as these sweat. So because there's so much more liquid in here, I don't have to keep an eye on it quite as much as with the onions because they're less likely to burn. So I'm going to let this sit now, and now I'm going to put my attention on the kale. Okay, so this is the kind of kale that I use in this. It's a green kale, and this is, I think I said in another video, this is the only thing I like to do with green kale is chop it up really, really small so I can't really notice it. I just don't care for the texture of this very much, but when it makes a perfect kale burger. And I do have a little bit of leftover dino kale as well. So what I'm going to do is pull the kale off the stem. This is very important. You don't want the stem in there. It's bitter and it doesn't taste very good. So that's the simple way, just pull it off. If that's not working for you, you can also cut it off. So you can lay your kale out and slide a knife just right along the edge. And if you have animals who like to eat this, you can save that for them. You can put it in your compost. We used to have bunny rabbits and they loved eating the kale stems. It was the most adorable thing. So. Off. Okay, and one more. Just pull the kale off of there. This little bit of stem at the top doesn't bother me, but any of this really thicker part I want to pull off. And I had a little bit of leftover dino kale from my breakfast, so I'm just going to add that in to this. And I'm going to go back to my food processor. And I'll rinse that up. Okay, so here's the blade, and I'm going to just chop this up just a little bit so it'll be a little bit easier to go through. And I washed this earlier and dried it, so that's why I'm not washing it again. And this is kind of a good thing to do if your kale has gotten a little bit old, like this kale has, where if you were going to use it for a salad or something, you wouldn't want to, so you can make it into this. So I'm going to shove that down a little bit into it. I find that it doesn't, I may have to do that a couple of times during the process. So I'm going to pulse it. Check it. It's still not quite small enough, so I'm going to press it again. Good. So you're seeing that it's about the same consistency as the others, and it's just about the same as the meat. So what I'm not going to do is cook this. This is just going to go in raw, in with the meat and the cooked vegetables. Ben's getting some interesting shots there. Okay, so let's go back to our mushrooms and onions. Oh, they're really doing nicely. So they just kind of just barely sticking to the bottom. It's not bad. If I had a pan that I was more worried about, I would come back, and check it more frequently, but this is getting really nice. So It's not going to be completely cooked, but they are going to sweat quite a bit. They've already done that. Okay. So now I'm going to take this beautiful mixture and I'm going to put it together with my kale and with my meat. So what I want to do now, actually, and I forgot to do this for the bright liners, is I'm going to weigh all of this. So I'm going to dump this out into this really quickly because it is all going to go together. I'm going to just dump this out. And then I'm going to weigh my bowl. I'm going to zero it out. So if you're a bright line eater, you know that's what we do. And then I'm just going to dump this in. Shouldn't use the word dump. That doesn't sound good. I'm going to gently slide all of this into the bowl. Okay. So that is it's 1 pound, 5 ounces. Don't look at it. It says 4.7, but it came up as 5. 1 pound, 5 ounces. So that is 21 ounces of vegetables. So you're gonna cut that in 4. So that's 5 ounces and 1/4 of vegetables is what you're putting in there. And the kale's not gonna change that much. So that's what I would say is I'm gonna say you're about 5 ounces of vegetables per patty. I'm gonna separate these into 4. And I have a 1 pound of meat. And when that meat does cook, it's gonna shrink down to, in my experience, down to about 3 ounces. And so I'm gonna separate this into 4 ounces of meat, 5 ounces of vegetables, and I'm gonna add 2 eggs. So that way I end up with 4 ounces of protein and 5 ounces of vegetables. So there we go. So what I'm gonna do, this is where it gets a little bit messy and you've got hot and cold going together. If you don't like that feeling of hot and cold, you can do this with you can put on gloves or you can do it just with a spoon. I don't kind of mind, so I'm gonna do it with my hands, but I will tell you feels a little bit weird. So I'm gonna crack 2 eggs in here. And then I'm gonna put in my meat and I'm gonna mix it all up with my hands. And it's pretty hot, so just gonna try and be careful. Woo, that is hot. Sometimes when I'm doing this, I have to run to the sink and cool my hand off and start over. Okay, so I'm gonna take a spoon and start to push that together. So I'm gonna just really get in there with my hands and try and get this to mush together. And they are going to kind of fall apart a little bit. The eggs will keep them together a little bit, but they're not gonna, I actually, because I don't eat bread, I just have these on a plate and I just use a fork. They will, but Ben eats them on bread and they're fine. You know, they don't really fall apart. When they cook, they'll come together a little bit. Okay. So if I wanted to be super exact, I would remeasure at this point to make sure that my measurements were correct, so that I could break them into 9-ounce burgers, 4 9-ounce burgers. So let's see, do I want to be that exact? Okay, hold on. We'll zero this out. And I'm going to put that in there. So that's 7. That is 9. Okay. See if I did my math correctly. And they look enormous, I know, but you have to think that they've got a lot of vegetables in there. I think I might have been inaccurate. That looks like it's going to be more than 9 ounces. Oh yeah. All right. Every time I do this, I think I'm doing my math correctly, but math is not my strong suit. So that is 9, and we have a little bit left over. And let's see. We have 3 ounces left over, so we're going to put just a little bit more in each one. I know, Bright Line Police would be after me, but that's okay. Okay. So there we go. And now I'm going to put these in the oven for about 20 minutes. And I'm going to check them in between. And so I'll just wash my hands. And then pop them in. I like to do them on the top of the oven. I think it's it kind of gets a little more heat to them, a little more of a broil. All right, so I'm going to set my timer actually for 15 minutes, and then we're going to check them. And Ben says flip them. I don't always flip them, but I could. After about 15 minutes, I might flip them if I felt I wanted to. So I'm not going to make you sit through this. We'll complete after they've come out of the oven. So the 15 minutes just went off, and I'm going to take a look and see. And I'm going to take a fork, just go in there. They're a little bit soft still, so I'm going to give them another 5 minutes. They're getting close to done. So pop that back in and set the timer for another 5 minutes. Okay, so my 5 minutes is up, and we're gonna check on it. Oh yeah, that's looking really good. So you can see that they're still really juicy, but they're a little firm. And I'm gonna take these out. And with any kind of meat like this, you really do want to let it sit for a few minutes outside of the oven. So I'm gonna turn off my oven. And I'm gonna let this sit for about 3 to 5 minutes, and what'll happen is these juices will sort of reabsorb back into it. So here they are, and when I took them out of the oven, I went ahead and weighed mine, and it was 8 ounces. So based on what I know from the shrinkage of the meat, that's 4 ounces of protein and 4 ounces of vegetables instead of 5, what I predicted. And so I have 10 ounces at lunch of vegetables, so I've added a 6-ounce salad. And for fat, I have 2 ounces of avocado. I find that you really just don't need anything else on this. They're really, really tasty just as they are, but of course you can always add extra condiments if that's your pleasure, but I don't think they need it. And you can see Ben is not a Bright Line eater, so he is having his own bread. And that's it. I hope you enjoy it. Leave a comment in the bottom if you enjoyed this, if you think you might make it, if you do make it, and go ahead and tell me how it was. Thanks.